Friends, fellow cosmic voyagers gather around. Today we are not looking at distant galaxies. We are looking at our own past. Or perhaps a past that wasn't quite what we thought. Have you ever felt like time is playing tricks on you? Maybe a Monday feels like a Friday, or a whole week vanishes in a blink. Well, imagine that on a grander scale. Imagine nearly 3 centuries of history just gone. Poof, vanished. This is not a science fiction movie plot, mind you. This is a real theory proposed by a German historian and publisher named Heribert Illig. He called it the phantom time hypothesis. Illig proposed in 1991 that the early Middle Ages, specifically the years AD 614 to AD 911, never actually happened. He suggests these 297 years were fabricated, added to the timeline, inserted by powerful people for reasons we will explore. Think about that for a moment. Almost 300 years of kings, battles, and societal changes could be an elaborate illusion. It sounds incredible, almost unbelievable. And that is precisely why we, as curious thinkers, must examine it. We must look at the evidence, ask the tough questions, and see where the journey takes us. So, what would motivate such a monumental deception, you ask? According to Illig, this grand historical forgery was orchestrated. He points fingers at figures like the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III and Pope Sylvester II. Their supposed goal? To place themselves in the auspicious year AD 1000. Fasten your seatbelts, because this is quite a ride through the annals of time. Heribert Illig wasn't just an accidental theorist. He was a German publisher and author with a keen interest in chronology. His journey into this phantom time hypothesis began with observations that made him scratch his head. He looked at the transition from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. He studied architectural styles. He pored over historical documents, or what he perceived as a lack thereof for a certain period. It wasn't a sudden flash of inspiration, but more like a slow-burning fuse of doubt. He felt something was amiss with the accepted timeline of the early Middle Ages. The year 1991 was when Illig formally presented his hypothesis. He published his ideas, challenging the established historical narrative. His primary focus was on the Anno Domini dating system. Illig argued that there were inconsistencies. He believed that the historical record for the 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries in Europe was suspiciously thin. Too few archaeological finds, he claimed. Too few reliable written sources. This perceived vacuum became a cornerstone of his theory. Illig's reasoning was that a conspiracy, likely involving Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and perhaps others, deliberately invented these centuries. This set the stage for a fascinating, if controversial, historical debate. One of Illig's central arguments revolves around the Gregorian calendar reform of 1582. The Julian calendar, introduced by Julius Caesar, was good, but not perfect. It slightly overestimated the length of a year. Over centuries, this small error accumulated. By the 16th century, the Julian calendar was out of sync with the astronomical seasons by about 10 days. Pope Gregory XIII decided to fix this. He decreed that 10 days be skipped. So, Thursday, October 4th, 1582, was followed by Friday, October 15th, 1582. This corrected the drift and gave us the Gregorian calendar, which we use today. Illig claimed that Pope Gregory XIII's astronomers miscalculated. Illig stated that the actual discrepancy by 1582 should have been 13 days, not 10 if all the centuries since Caesar had truly passed. The Julian calendar gains about 1 day every 128 years, so from its institution in 45 BC to AD 1582, that's 1627 years. Illig calculated this should mean 1627 divided by 128 equals approximately 12.7 days of error. Since only 10 days were skipped, Illig concluded that about 3 centuries worth of drift, roughly 3 days, never actually happened. These 3 centuries, he proposed, were the phantom years. Another major pillar supporting the phantom time hypothesis is the supposed lack of evidence from the period AD 614 to AD 911. Illig and his supporters argue that these 3 centuries are suspiciously barren. They claim there's a scarcity of reliable archaeological finds. They also point to a perceived lack of original written documents from this era in Western Europe. It's as if, they suggest, this period is a historical desert, an empty stage where major historical dramas should have been playing out. But instead, there's only silence and shadows. This argument from silence is a powerful rhetorical tool. If nearly 300 years were just invented, you wouldn't expect to find genuine artifacts or contemporary records from that non-existent time, would you? Illig suggested that many documents attributed to this period are actually later forgeries, created perhaps in the 10th or 11th centuries to fill in the fabricated gap. Section 5. Charlemagne, a king, a legend, or a clever forgery. Perhaps one of the most sensational claims within the phantom time hypothesis concerns a towering figure of European history, Charlemagne. Yes, Charles the Great, the king of the Franks and Lombards, and the first Holy Roman Emperor. A figure who looms large in the traditional narrative of the early Middle Ages. According to Heribert Illig, Charlemagne, as we know him, might be largely, if not entirely, a fictional character, a legendary figure created to populate the fabricated centuries. Illig proposed that Charlemagne was a product of the same conspiracy that allegedly inserted the phantom years. He suggested that Emperor Otto III, in his desire to link himself to a glorious past and legitimize his rule, needed a heroic predecessor. Charlemagne, with his vast empire and his coronation by the Pope in AD 800, a year falling squarely within the supposed phantom time, fit the bill perfectly. So the story goes, Charlemagne was constructed. Section 6. Correcting the calendar's course. Historians weigh in. Now let's return to that intriguing calendar argument. Remember Illig's claim that Pope Gregory XIII's reform in 1582 only removed 10 days, but it should have been 13, implying 3 centuries never occurred. Well, mainstream historians and astronomers have a rather straightforward explanation for this, and it doesn't involve any missing time at all. The key, they say, lies in understanding precisely what the Gregorian reform aimed to achieve. It wasn't about correcting the calendar drift all the way back to Julius Caesar's time in 45 BC. The main purpose of the Gregorian reform was to restore the date of the vernal equinox to March 21st. Why March 21st? Because this was its approximate date at the time of the First Council of Nicaea in AD 325. The Council of Nicaea was crucial because it established rules for calculating the date of Easter. Easter is tied to the vernal equinox. So the drift of the Julian calendar was causing Easter to fall progressively later in the year, which was a big concern for the Church. Section 7. Celestial witnesses. The sky doesn't lie. The sky is an impartial witness. The universe operates on precise schedules. Events like solar eclipses and comets are predictable. They are like cosmic clockwork. Ancient chroniclers recorded these events. These records provide an independent timeline. They help cross-check historical dating. What do they say about AD 614 to AD 911? The sky doesn't support missing time. Solar eclipse records match modern calculations. Missing years would misalign these records, but they align perfectly. Historians and astronomers confirm this. Consistent correlations disprove phantom years. Take Halley's Comet, for example. It returns every 76 years. Section 8. Unearthing reality, archaeological and textual rebuttals. While celestial evidence is compelling, what about evidence here on Earth? Heribert Illig argued for a scarcity of archaeological finds and written documents from the period AD 614 to 911 in Western Europe. However, mainstream historians and archaeologists present a very different picture. They argue that while the nature and quantity of evidence may differ from other periods, it is far from non-existent. In fact, they point to a substantial and growing body of material and textual evidence that firmly anchors these centuries in reality. This evidence comes not just from Europe, but from interconnected cultures around the world. Archaeologists have unearthed numerous sites dating to this specific period. These include settlements, burial sites with datable grave goods, churches, and even Viking ship burials. Techniques like dendrochronology, tree ring dating, and radiocarbon dating provide scientific methods for dating organic materials from these sites. These methods are independent of historical chronologies based on king lists or annals. And guess what? They consistently confirm the conventional dating of artifacts and sites within the supposed phantom years. For example, timber from buildings constructed in this era matches the tree ring sequences that span these centuries without any 300-year gap. Section 9. The Verdict of History. Why Phantom Time Remains a Phantom. The phantom time hypothesis is fascinating but lacks evidence. Mainstream historians and scientists overwhelmingly reject it. It is contradicted by vast data from multiple lines of inquiry. The hypothesis crumbles under this contradictory evidence. It remains a fringe theory, not historical reality. Heribert Illig's arguments have been refuted by experts. Calendar calculations were based on a misunderstanding. Astronomical records provide a consistent timeline. Archaeological finds confirm activities during the supposed phantom years. Historical records from various civilizations corroborate the conventional chronology. There is too much evidence affirming the period from AD 614 to AD 911. The hypothesis reminds us of the importance of critical thinking in history and science.